Tonight on the All Kinds of Weather Forecast, we recap the Gators 48-20 thrashing over the Kentucky Wildcats. We recap the game and where the Gators go heading into the bye week before a huge showdown in Jacksonville against the Georgia Bulldogs. This is the All Kinds of Weather Forecast. And welcome in to another episode of All Kinds of Weather Forecast. I am your host, Chris Yanes, and we've got an incredible victory show for you tonight. It feels pretty good coming off a homecoming victory over the Kentucky Wildcats. What's old is new again. The Gators thrashed them 48-20, harkening back to some of those old school victories the Gators had over the Wildcats, what we grew accustomed to in the 1990s, the 2000s, and even really the last decade before Mark Stoops got there and started giving the Gators hell every time we played them. But not on this night. The Gators dominated the game. And of course, if you are tuning in with us tonight, we want to make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Leave a like, leave a comment, your reaction to the Gators' huge victory over the Kentucky Wildcats. We certainly want to hear your thoughts. And we haven't had a lot of these shows where I think are going to be coming on here a little bit more upbeat. Today, I'm hosting this one solo, but we're going to have Neil to get his thoughts. We're eagerly excited to hear those. And of course, though, we're also eagerly excited to shout out our sponsors of the show. First, the All Kinds Weather Forecast is proudly sponsored by 401k Generation, the wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for your 401k plan and its participants, and they also offer a range of enrollment solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan. Whether it's saving for your child's college, investment advice, or even your retirement, 401k Generation's team of advisors makes getting to know you their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life's financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. 401k Generation, building stronger futures one generation at a time. For more information, contact them at 866-998-5879 or visit their website at 401kgeneration.com. Shout out 401k Generation, shout out Eddie Rojas. And also, we want to shout out our newest apparel partner with the show, the official apparel partner of the All Kinds of Weather Forecast, and that is Heads and Tails. As you can see, I'm donning the new reversible hat that they sell in their store. This was a special release for homecoming. You can get it in store or online at theheadsandtails.com. And of this polo, also with the standing Albert Gator, similar thing here, you can get that online. So for nearly 30 years, they've been the go-to shop for Gator merchandise, apparel, and gifts. Whether you're looking for the latest jerseys, stylish hats, or unique memorabilia, Heads and Tails has got you covered. They hand select only the highest quality styles and brands, ensuring that you can truly champion your team with pride. In July 2023, families came together to continue the legacy of Heads and Tails after it was put up for sale, and they're proudly carrying on this tradition. They could not do it without the amazing support from the local community and fans from all over, and your enthusiasm fuels their passion. And we are offering our listeners an exclusive offer using the code IAKOW30. That's IAKOW30 for 30% off in store or online at theheadsandtails.com. So make sure you use that code to get that 30% off. Take advantage of it at least through the end of the year. Gear up for the holidays coming up. Gear up for the season and show off your Gator pride. So what's old is new again. The Gators get a massive victory over the Kentucky Wildcats, 48-20 in front of the 10th consecutive sellout crowd of almost just shy of 90,000 fans. This was a record-setting night for the Gators. Freshman running back Jadan Baugh tying Tim Tebow and Trey Burton with 5 rushing touchdowns in his first career start as a Gator. And I think really, if there's one quick takeaway that you can have from this night, it's the fact that the Gators really, I think, got a glimpse into the future of what could be possible with Jadan Baugh and DJ Lagway leading the way for this Gators team. You know, obviously this season has not gone according to plan at all times. There's been some moments where, you know, we've definitely have needed a little bit more from this offense as well as the defense. But on this game, they probably played their most complete game of the season, without a doubt. Outside of the special teams mishap with the kickoff return when Florida was up 27-6, and then on the ensuing kickoff, Kentucky did go down, take that kickoff and made it 27-13. They ended up making it 27-20, but of course the Gators would go on another 21-0 scoring run to finish with that 48-20 win. But like I said, the story of the night, freshman running back Jadan Baugh, 5 rushing touchdowns, tying Tim Tebow and Trey Burton. Trey Burton, of course, did that in the 2010 game against the Kentucky Wildcats, where the Gators won 48-14. And Tim Tebow did that against South Carolina late in the 2007 season. Many credit that 5 touchdown performance, of course, for him winning his eventual Heisman Trophy that season. So, elite company that Jadan Baugh entered here by rushing for 5 touchdowns. And of course, DJ Lagway. Now, while if you look at his stat line, 7 of 14 on the night, but 259 yards. Now, I know that he did have the interception on the miscommunication on the route there. That's stuff that is certainly a teachable moment. But let me give you a statistic out there that I think will really show what kind of a special player Lagway can be here at Florida. DJ Lagway now has 10 completions for 40 plus yards or more. He had 5 of those against Kentucky last night, and he had 5 of them against Sanford in his other start earlier this season. That is more than Kyle Trask. That is more than Tim Tebow in one single game. Kyle Trask did that in the 2020 season against LSU, and Tim Tebow did that in his first start as a Gator in 2007 against Western Kentucky, where he had 4 completions of 40 yards or more. So DJ Lagway now has joined the company of 2 Heisman finalists and 1 quarterback that won 2 SEC and national championships. So elite company for DJ Lagway here in this performance. So let's not scoff at this. I understand this is a Kentucky team that is reeling right now. They've been struggling as of late. They're now down to 3-4 on the season, certainly in jeopardy of not making a bowl game. But this is an SEC team. This is an SEC game. This is a team that had beaten Florida going into this matchup 3 consecutive times. So the fact that DJ Lagway was able to put on this performance in his first SEC game as a starter is very impressive. So we definitely cannot take away from that whatsoever. So what else stood out from this game? Of course, the Gators put up a very impressive 476 yards. Why is that impressive? Kentucky had not given up that amount of yards the entire season. This is the worst defensive output for the Mark Stoops' squad this season, including against Georgia, including against Ole Miss, the high-powered Ole Miss offense that many are impressed about, and that's why people are talking about Lane Kiffin as a possible coach for Florida. No team was able to put up that offensive performance until last night. The Gators did it with 279 through the air, 259 of those yards, like I mentioned, from DJ Lagway, and 197 on the ground, most, of course, coming from Jadan Baugh's performance. The Gators averaging 4.5 yards a carry, very efficient on third down. They were 6 of 12 on third down conversions. And the story, though, why the Gators were able to set up this offensive performance was an opportunistic defense that forced 3 turnovers, 3 interceptions. They were able to get into the backfield and harass Brock Vandergriff into some really bad throws in this game. And that is why Florida was able to come away with a large 48-21 victory powered by 2 21-0 runs in this game. So, general thoughts on this performance? This by far is the best game, the best performance, the most complete performance of the season for the Florida Gators. It certainly gives these guys a lot of confidence going forward that they can definitely accomplish more things this season. Now, this is where the road gets really difficult. We'll talk about that later in this episode of what's ahead for this Gators team. But general thoughts is that we have to be pretty excited about what we saw. Mark Stoops has had Florida's number now for years. This was probably the most comfortable Kentucky win. I mean, obviously, there was the 34-10 win in the COVID year. That was the last time we won by this amount of points. But really, you'd have to go back to really the 2016 game where it was true domination. If people remember in that 2020 game, It took a Kadarius Toney punt return right before halftime to actually give the Gators the lead. There really wasn't a point in this game where Kentucky threatened where we might have lost this game. In fact, if you look at the ESPN FPI and the percentage chance to win throughout the game, there was not one moment Kentucky had a higher percentage chance than Florida to win this game. So Florida dominated this game really from start to finish. There certainly was a frustrating moment where Kentucky was able to take a 27-6 lead and chop it down to 27-20, but Florida responded. Florida responded in that moment, something that at times they have not done. They did not do that last week against Tennessee. They were not able to overcome the adversity on the field and the adversity with some of the questionable play calling and schemes from our coaching staff. But on this night, they were able to get it done. So by far the most complete performance. And, of note, this is the highest points performance from a Billy Napier team. 48 points, now surpassing the Mississippi State 45 points that they put up a couple of weeks ago. This is the second time in SEC play that we've done that this season. So this is by far a performance that we can feel pretty good about going into the bye week. We needed this. We absolutely needed this to have some sort of hope going into the gauntlet that is going to be the last third of this schedule. So let's talk offense. Let's get a little bit more into the breakdown of that. Obviously, we mentioned DJ Lagway. Obviously, we mentioned Jadan Baugh. Let's shout out this receiving core. Elijah Badger, 3 catches, turning that into 148 yards, having 50, 58, and 40 on the night. That is just absolutely incredible. DJ Lagway obviously contributing to that, but Elijah Badger really taking the top off the defense in this game. Eugene Trey Wilson, 1 catch for 40 yards. He did it on the opening drive when Lagway was able to extend the play, got some really good protection from his offensive line, and was able to deliver a pass down the field. Obviously, slowly getting back into this. I think a lot of fans would have liked to have seen a little bit more of Wilson and getting him involved in this game plan, but nonetheless, it's good to see him back out there. He certainly, at the very least, is having defenses have to account for him each and every night he's out there. And we'll see if they can devise a game plan for him to use him a little bit more against Georgia. And then, of course, Chimere Dike, only 2 catches, 67 yards, but once again, showing up in the stat sheet, showing up and making a big impact. This receiving core continues to be a massive strength for Florida. And going forward, we're going to need them to continue to do so against the back half of the schedule. I said in the preview for this game that the key for Florida was, 1, a fast start, and we needed to see some aggression in the passing game. We saw that in this game. Mark Stoops wanted to make this a ground it and pound it game, clock control, limiting possessions for Florida. He was not able to do that. And I thought Billy Napier was going to play conservatively in this game, but he was able to play complementary football, like he likes to say. Florida ran the ball 44 times, only passed it 15, but they were really able to take their shots and make them count in this game, in the passing game. So being able to complete 279 yards on only 8 completions is pretty remarkable, showing what this offense can do when you're able to open up the run game a little bit. And then there's that threat of the play action pass from Lagway. He's able to hit some deep balls down the field, and we saw that on this night. So that's something to continue to look forward to when we play Georgia, when we play Texas on the road, and we come home and play LSU and Ole Miss. Those are going to be the things that we're going to need to see going forward if we're going to have any chance to pull some upsets on the latter half of the schedule. And then the run game too, Lagway, 10 carries, 46 yards in this game. Defense is now having to account for the fact that he can run the football. We knew that, but I don't think we truly saw it as much. There were some designed runs in this game that really stretched the defense horizontally. Billy Napier loves to run it between the tackles. He comes up with some really good stuff too, where he pulls the guards in the center and we break it out to the outside. But this was the time where we finally started to see some of that RPO and what it could do with an athlete like DJ Lagway. We've talked about some of the limitations of Graham Mertz in the past where you're not able to do that. This was a wrinkle in the offense that we had not seen really since the week we played Stanford, but now we saw it against the defense that has some good athletes on their side of the ball. So definitely something to continue to look forward to, but I'm really impressed with the fact, and I'm going to give a lot of credit here to Billy Napier for devising a game plan that utilized the skill sets of DJ Lagway, but still protected him, knowing that he's learning. There's still a learning curve. And obviously, we saw that with the interception, with the miscommunication where he threw the post when it was really an out. That stuff that's correctable. But Napier devised a game plan. They put Florida in their best chance to win and didn't play the game that Mark Stoops wanted to play. I mean, Kentucky did run the ball for 146 yards. They had a little over 4 yards a carry, but they struggled to pass the ball, completing only 12 of 32 of their passes. They had 3 interceptions, like I mentioned, only 165 yards through the ground. We forced them to play the game they didn't want to play, and it showed. And that was why we saw the result on this night. So, huge shout out to the playmakers, the skill position players in this game. We're going to need to see more of these efforts down the line. Florida's going to have to put up 30 plus points a game in order to have a chance to win. So we're going to need to see this performance repeated over and over and over again to have success down the schedule. And we'll see if we're able to do it against better defenses. But you have to give credit to this coaching staff for having these guys ready to play. And now they're going to have 2 more weeks going into that Georgia game to come up with another game plan that is successful and puts these guys in the best chance to win the game. All right. So let's talk defense here for the Gators. I mean, the defense played very well overall, only giving up 13 points in regulation. 7 of Kentucky's 20 points were a part of that kickoff return. So overall, you have to feel pretty good about the way they played here. There were multiple times in this game where it was 3rd and short and even 4th and short, and Florida was able to shut down Kentucky at those critical moments. Kentucky in this game, while they did get 17 first downs, was 4 of 13 on 3rd down and 1 of 5 from 4th down. So Florida was able to stuff Kentucky several times. There was the moment after the DJ Lagway interception. Jacoby Jackson makes a touchdown saving tackle, which forced Kentucky then to have to score inside the 10-yard line. Florida was able to get a goal line stand there, a huge critical goal line stand that the Gators then turned around and scored a touchdown with, completely changing the momentum of the game when Kentucky could have tied it up there. And who knows the way the game would have gone after that point. But because the defense came up huge there, they were able to get a massive, massive stop. Now, I think a lot of fans are going to want to touch on Cormani McClain. We'll get to him in a second, but I certainly want to shout out some other athletes that flashed once again and have been flashing every single game on tape. I mean, if you look at what the Gators have done from a, pro football focus perspective, the athletes that have continued to flash, once again, Devin Moore grading out outside of Cormani McClain as the highest rated defensive player. Starting in this, I only say start. He's a starter. Cormani McClain came in late in the game due to Jason Marshall getting hurt. We still do not know the extent of that injury at the time of this recording. We're hoping to obviously get some more updates from Billy Napier as the week goes on. So make sure you're following along in all kinds of weather to get those updates as they come. But Devin Moore, we said before this season that he probably could be the best cover corner for Florida. Showed that in this game, getting his second interception, setting up the 1-yard touchdown run for Jadan Baugh later on that drive. Grayson Pup-Howard also continuing to grade out as the best linebacker on this team. Shamar James, of course, also playing very well, but Grayson Pup-Howard flashing all over the field, coming up with 4 tackles for loss 4 tackles and a half tackle for loss in this game. And then Troqueezy Bridges leading the team with 10 tackles on the day, 5 solo, coming up with his first interception in a Gator uniform. Jack Pyburn, 8 tackles in this game, continuing to assert himself on the edge there. He's definitely, I think, locked down that edge spot. We've been looking for somebody to emerge, and he certainly has done that. And then Shamar James, Jaden Robinson, locking down the other 2 linebacker spots. Good to see that linebacker core has come together, come to fruition through efforts of recruiting and development. More importantly, we've got to give our due to the defensive staff for getting these guys in a position to be ready this season to go. Jordan Castell, I think, played one of his better games as a Gator this season. We had talked about the sophomore slump that we feel like he's gone through, but there was definitely better tackling from him in this game. There were not those moments where I think oftentimes he's kind of waited for the ball carrier to come to him and he hasn't shown a willingness to tackle. That was not on tape here. So it was good to see him show up in a better way. We're going to need to continue to see those efforts. And Castell and Bridges, I think right now that's kind of those are your two starting safeties that are going to hold it down. Aaron Gates, as well as Sharif Denson, locking down that star nickel role, playing very well there as well. And that's why this defense is starting to find success. Florida had struggled in coverage early in the year, playing very off the ball, very conservatively. Now we're starting to see that aggression. Florida, because they're getting home in the backfield, this secondary now is finally able to eat the way we thought they could. And athletes like Gates and Sharif Denson locking down those nickel spots, maybe the best nickel combination we've had since CJ Gardner-Johnson. George Gums also flashing in this game. Desmond Watson, he was a big part of that stuff on the 4th and 1 deep in Florida's territory that turned the game. So we got to give him a shout out there. He continues to be kind of that gap filler, if you will, for the big guy there. So this defense played a tremendous game. But the story of the night on the defense, former 5-star Cormani McClain. Now, if this isn't the best redemption story or life being full of second chances, this is a great example of it. It was at this time 2 years ago where everybody believed Cormani McClain was going to be committing to the Florida Gators, and he spurned the Gators in his commitment in October of 2022, picking the Miami Hurricanes. We all know the rest, though. He actually spurned the Hurricanes several months later in January in this long, drawn-out, diva-like recruitment process where he ended up at Colorado and Deion Sanders. And, of course, Deion Sanders basically told him to find another team. And in come the Florida Gators this offseason. Billy Napier offers him a second chance after a lot of schools really did not pursue him in the portal. Florida gave him a preferred walk-on spot. Now, of course, we know in the era of NIL now, that means that, just because you're not on scholarship doesn't mean you're getting compensated. Florida was able to get it worked out, though, where Cormani McClain got his second chance. We heard reports before the season started that things weren't jiving for Cormani McClain. He wasn't showing up to meetings. He wasn't showing up to practice. All of that came out that it wasn't necessarily true and that he was buying in. He was listening to the coaches. And finally, in the 7th game of the season, when Jason Marshall goes down, our best corner on the team, a guy who probably will get drafted in the NFL draft next season, gets his number called, not only breaks up a pass attempt in the end zone that saved the touchdown, but then gets a pick six late in the game, capping off the most impressive performance to date this season. And I got to say, the video, if anybody's seen it, if you go up on our Twitter page and all kinds of weather Twitter page, the players going to celebrate in the back of the end zone, the entire sideline, a la 2007 Georgia, celebrates so hard that it draws multiple penalty flags and a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, just highlighting the fact of how much these coaches, these players love Cormani McClain. So it is the ultimate redemption story to see him overcome all of the things he did. And certainly, when we all were 17, 18 years old, we certainly, I'm sure, made our fair share of immature decisions. But showing that he was able to now overcome that, and when his number was called, he was ready to perform in this game, and he got one of the more memorable plays in a Gator uniform in a long time with that pick six. So what an incredible story. What incredible way to cap a fun homecoming game, all because he was ready to have his number called. And listen, we're going to need Cormani to be ready for the rest of the season. We don't know the extent, like I said, of Jason Marshall's injury, but if he's not good to go for the next couple of games, Cormani McClain is your other corner that's going to play. Jadan Johnson played well in this game, and he's going to play certainly too. I think we'll probably see a rotation there opposite of Devin Moore. We're certainly going to definitely need to see Devin Moore stay healthy. He's been healthy now since the beginning of the season, which is good, but he has had a history of injuries in the past, so we hope that does not rear its ugly head again. But with McClain, Jadan Johnson rotating there at that corner spot, we're going to need to see those two guys step up. So good to see McClain get his number called, get that big interception, return for a touchdown. And Jadan Johnson had a moment in this game, if you look, Neil shared it on the Twitter page as well, where he was able to beat a guy off the edge, disrupt the quarterback's rhythm, forcing Vandergrift to scramble out, and then the play was then eaten up on the sideline, I believe, by Jack Pyburn. So that just goes to show, though, that the young guys they're going to go through their mistakes like a lot of young players do, corners do, DBs do in the SEC, but they have the talent to be able to hold it down there in the absence of Jason Marshall. So we're going to look to see how those guys continue to perform. They're certainly going to have a big test in 2 weeks in Jacksonville, but shout out McClain and shout out Dejon Johnson for the performance they did after Jason Marshall went down in this game. Now, obviously, special teams. Not exactly what we would have hoped for. The last two games after the first five being solid, on the kick return game being very sound, the kicking game being very sound. Special teams the last 2 weeks has certainly hurt the Gators. Now, in this game, it didn't affect us too much because Florida obviously was able to pull away and win by 4 scores. But had this game been closer, that kick return could have made a big difference in this game and put us in a much more difficult position. So that's something that Florida's going to have to get cleaned up. You have to be sound in the kicking game and in the defensive kick returns. Now Kentucky, obviously, Barry Brown is an incredible athlete. He not only had that kick return, but he also caught the flea flicker touchdown earlier in the game. But that was his 5th kick return in his career. You should have been prepared for that in this game. So if there's something we're going to nit coaching on this game, it's that you had to know the athlete that Barry Brown was, and the history that he has been able to had returned 4 previously coming into this contest, and then he did it again and just took off right out down the sideline and almost went untouched for the touchdown. So that's something that we have to get cleaned up in the coming weeks. But Timber DK, didn't have any returns in this game. Florida, don't believe had any kick returns in this game. Or actually, no, they did. They had 3. They had Jadan Baugh and Elijah Badger back there. And they averaged about 20 yards on the return. Not terrible, but I think right now Florida just has to get certain things cleaned up. They have to regain the consistency that they had. Tennessee, it was the 12 men on the field that killed us with the 3 points that may have resulted in us losing the game ultimately. And in this game, it was a kick return. So we can't let special teams beat us no matter what. Now, tonight, like I said, we won by 28, but against Georgia, highly doubt we're in that same situation. So, and then against Georgia, against Texas, against better teams who already may have an advantage in coaching or in player talent, you cannot give up something in the kicking game that's going to give them even more of an advantage than they already have. So this is obviously probably the part where we weren't as complete on the night, but we need to see special teams get cleaned up in the game. So if I had to give a shout out now to some player spotlights, 2 to 3 guys that I think were players of the game, if you will. DJ Lagway is going to be special at Florida. We talked about the fact that he has now accomplished something that only Kyle Trask and Tim Tebow accomplished with the explosiveness in the passing game. But now this is his team, and he went through the motions of getting ready to be QB1 against an SEC opponent. He's going to have to go through the motions again against Georgia. Thank goodness that he had this start before the Georgia game. I think we all remember when Anthony Richardson's number was called 3 years ago against Georgia, and Dan Mullen, who probably started him in spite of the fans and did not do Anthony Richardson any favors in starting him against the number 1 team in the country and the eventual national champions. At least DJ Lagway now has had an SEC start and an FCS start under his belt, and he's going to have a full bye week to prepare for this defense of Kirby Smart. But you've got to be excited about the future of what DJ Lagway can bring to this program. No matter what happens this offseason, obviously we want to keep DJ Lagway in a Gator uniform. I think if you look at with a family, you saw DJ Lagway's dad at Gator Walk beforehand, high-fived and shook the hands of every coach and every player coming up the Gator Walk to the stadium. These guys love being Gators. All right, so and I'll reiterate, and we had some fans in the comments last show, so talk about the fact no player is worth keeping or no coach is worth keeping for one player. And I agree. We should not sacrifice the long-term future of the program for one athlete. However, having DJ Lagway remain as a Gator, watching his play the last couple of weeks, he's special. And if Florida has any hope to turn the corner sooner than later, he is the ticket to doing so. People underestimate the power of a really great quarterback and what it can do for a program. Look no further than up north in Tallahassee, Florida, and what the situation that's now unfolding in Tallahassee. Jordan Travis saved Mike Norvell from getting fired. Jordan Travis was able to win 10 games in 2022, and then he turned it around and was able to win 12 games before getting injured. Did not play that last game, those last 3 games of the season, but those last 2, the one the regular season against us, and then the ACC championship game where they did go undefeated before getting throttled by Georgia. Yes, FSU fans, that game happened. It counted. But that goes to show what a great quarterback can do for a program, because 1 year later now, FSU is on the precipice, 8 games into the schedule, of being not eligible for a bowl game, eliminated completely from bowl eligibility because they no longer have Jordan Travis. They no longer have the playmaker that helped that offense thrive. So that just goes to show the power of what a quarterback can do. There's going to be conversations now, and there already are from fan reactions this morning, of what does this mean now going forward? You've got a coach now sitting at 4-3, 500 in conference play, and finally now getting to the teeth of the gauntlet that is ahead. DJ Lagway is our only hope to pulling upsets. And now, coupled with the fact you have a great running back in Jadan Baugh, Florida has playmakers in that receiving core as well, that together they can make a difference for us moving forward. So, shout out Jadan Baugh, shout out DJ Lagway. And honestly, the collective of the defensive performance, that is the ticket moving forward. We need to see this consistently. The problem with Billy Napier, and kind of switching gears now, because we need to talk about Billy Napier. We need to talk about what this means. The cloud that has lingered now over this program for 7 games. What is the future of Billy Napier after he lost in embarrassing fashion against Miami, prompting the calls for his removal as head coach? Neil and I have done it, and most Gator fans now have called for that. We still, I would have to say at this time, do not believe he is the future for this program for all the reasons we've talked about. But the only way this changes, is if he can find consistency. Stringing together momentum has been his biggest problem. The longest winning streak in Billy Napier's tenure is 3 games. That was last season after he dropped the opening game. He almost had it. He would have actually, had we beaten Tennessee last week and then gone on to win similarly that we did against Kentucky last night, that would have been 4 in a row the first time. That would have been a new best for Napier. And Florida would have been 5-2 going into a bye week against Georgia, same as they were last year. We said that Florida had to be 6-1 through this 7-game stretch. No worse than 5-2. And now, looking at the talent that we have, that is definitely the case. We should not be worse than 5-2, but we are. We're 4-3. So what that means is, if you count and if you believe that Florida will beat Florida State, like I think many people do now, that means you have to find one upset between Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, and LSU. 3 of those teams being in the top 10 right now, 2 of them in the top 5. In all, still alive for playoff contention in the college football playoff 12-team format. You got to find one upset in there. Having watched the performance of the last 2 weeks from the athletes that we have on the field, it is totally possible. It is totally possible. And, setting expectations going into the season, 6 or 7 was the barometer in which people believed Napier had to hit in order to be retained at Florida. So the calls now coming out of this week are going to be, what does Napier have to do to keep his job in 2025? He is almost there for some of the expectations that we said. I said 6 games going into the season, although I kind of have revised that, being how I've seen some of the things that I just can't ignore, which is the bad play calling at times and the embarrassment of the first two FBS opponent games that we saw this season at home against Miami and A&M, being unprepared, especially against a Miami team that has shown vulnerabilities on defense now 3 weeks in a row. So it's hard to ignore all of that. This is great. This is a fantastic win for this program. But it's hard to see how he is going to be able to overcome some of the issues that we now have seen in the past and overcome them against opponents that to date have played much better college football. All that being said, college football is the greatest sport for a reason, and that is from week to week, things can change. Look at Tennessee. Last week was on the precipice of losing to us. 1 week later, turns around and beats Alabama at home for the second time in 3 years. Now Tennessee has a chance to get to the SEC championship game, certainly in the thick of the college football playoff hunt, all because they were able to beat Alabama and overcome a scare against us. Things can change. Things can change. And Florida is certainly capable of springing an upset. But they are going to have to remain, they are going to have to be consistent. They're going to have to be, the play calling has to be perfect. The players have to be dialed in. The coaching staff has to put them in a position to be successful. Utilize the skill set that we've talked about. It's possible. I'm not sure it's likely, but that's why we are here to break it all down for you and to talk about it in the weeks ahead. Really quick, and something that I think is interesting, though, about this Georgia matchup ahead. Before the Gators game against Kentucky, ESPN gave Florida a less than 10% chance to beat Georgia. After the Bulldogs beat the number one Texas Longhorns yesterday, and the Gators then put up the 48 points against Kentucky, Florida's chances to beat Georgia doubled overnight. It is at 20.9% on the ESPN matchup predictor. Florida, as we talked about, continues to exceed its power ranking and all of the power ranking polls out there. If you look at ours and the all kinds of weather forecasters, if you look at ESPN, way ahead of where people would have them pulled out. So the metrics say that Florida has at least a 1 in 5 chance to beat Georgia. That's a puncher's chance. It's better than what we thought going into the season. It's certainly better than we thought a week ago. So it's going to be, I will say, I think this is probably the best chance Florida's had maybe against Georgia in a couple of seasons. They had momentum going into the game last year, but I think Florida has a better team this year. And maybe Georgia's still trying to figure things out. This is the same Georgia team that went to Lexington and needed officiating to help them eke out a 1-point win against Mark Stoops. And then Florida beat that same Mark Stoops team by 28 points. That's why you can never be too high or too low in this world of college football. So it makes it a great sport. That's why we watch every single Saturday. But I thought that was interesting to see Florida now with a 1 in 5 chance at potentially beating and upsetting the Dogs. And what would that look like? What would the world that we could live in now if we were able to beat Georgia? Certainly the conversations around here would be interesting. So make sure that you are tuned in here. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button down below, liking this show, leaving a comment on your thoughts about all of that. Leave your thoughts and comment about whether your reaction to the Kentucky game, your reaction to potentially Florida having a better chance against Georgia. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying there's a chance now because before I think that we just didn't see a pathway to, but now with a quarterback who is putting up numbers and doing things we haven't seen since Heisman frontrunners played on our field, anything's possible. Anything is certainly possible. You need an X factor, and DJ Lagway and Jadan Baugh could be that for Florida in 2 weeks in Jacksonville. I want to shout out our fans for all of the support that they have shown. So make sure you're following us on the hit those. You see all the social media outlets that we're on. Make sure you're following us in all those places. You're hitting that subscribe button, like I mentioned. And if you're listening on audio format, please rate and review the show. Leave a 5-star ranking. It helps us bring Gator Nation all great content. We're going to have lots of shows here in the bye week too. We're going to reassess some things. I think in this bye week, we're going to look at potentially what it would look like if ultimately Florida does go in a different direction. You and I really haven't talked about who our potential replacements are. I think it's time to have that conversation, at least in the bye week, and then maybe reevaluating what it would take to keep Billy Napier here. We got to play both sides here. Anything is possible in the world of college football, as I've talked about. So we appreciate you all tuning in here today, this recap show of the Kentucky game. We're going to have more content. Neil will be on later this week, and he'll give his thoughts about the Kentucky game and everything that's happened over the weekend. And like I said, we'll be gearing up, getting ready for that Georgia game. And also basketball's on the horizon too. So make sure, all the more reason that you're following along with us here on this YouTube channel. And want to give one more shout out to our new apparel sponsor, Heads and Tails. Make sure you're using that code IAKOW30 for 30% off in store or online at theheadsandtails.com. That's IAKOW30 for 30% off in store or online at theheadsandtails.com. So from all of us here at the In All Kinds Weather Forecast, signing off from another great episode.